Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are cutting a path through the filmography of one of cinema's most, well, idiosyncratic and I'd argue most influential modern
You're
masters.
smelling art.
We are taking a deep dive into the work of director John Boorman.
And what a career to dive into. Born in 1933, he began his life right in the middle of the chaos of the London Blitz.
Wow.
And I think he carried that sense of primal shock and this resilient spirit through a career that now spans, what, 6 decades?
It's an incredible run, and his resume is just a genre-hopping marvel. I mean, you've got survival thrillers, you have Arthurian legend,
Crime noir, metaphysical sci-fi.
and then these deeply personal memoirs. On paper, it just looks chaotic. I mean, how do you even reconcile the sheer terror of Deliverance with, say, the shimmering mythology of Excalibur?
You really can't, not on the surface.
So, your mission, if you're listening, is to walk away from this with a definitive understanding of the thread that connects all these diverse works. And that is his singular artistic vision. This is, we hope, the shortcut to being well-informed about a director who fundamentally prioritized artistic sincerity over, fleeting commercial trends.
That is the core thesis, exactly. For Boorman, film is never just an exercise in storytelling or entertainment. It's a vessel for myth and archetype.
Okay.
He takes these ancient, eternal human struggles, and he examines them through this brutally modern, often visceral lens. He has always measured success not by box office tallies.
Which were often not that great.
Right, not at all.
Hmm.
But by the lasting value and the profound resonance of the questions his films raise. He is a mythmaker in an age of, well, manufactured spectacle.
Let's start there then. Let's unpack his visual signature first, because it is so pronounced, so unique. You instantly recognize a Boorman film. It doesn't matter the decade or the subject.
You really do.
And the starting point for everything seems to be the setting itself, the landscape.
It absolutely starts with the setting. Boorman is a master of natural environments, but he uses them far beyond just, setting the scene. The landscape is an active character in the narrative.
Right.
It's always exerting pressure. You think about the treacherous rapids of the Cohulawasi River in Deliverance, or the mysterious landscapes of Arthurian Britain.
Or even the jungle in the Emerald Forest. It feels oppressive.
Exactly, the oppressive emerald green forests. It's not just beautiful scenery, which it often is, but the environment itself is testing the characters. It's demanding a kind of spiritual or physical reckoning from them.
It feels alive, almost like it's breathing.
It does. Nature in his films, it pulses with symbolic meaning and primal power. If you're a character in a Boorman film, the environment is going to expose the fault lines in your character. It's inevitable.
So how does he achieve that? I mean, that intensity, it must come down to his camera work and composition choices.
It does. And he seems to reject the hyperactive, rapid-cut editing style that dominates so much of modern cinema entirely. Boorman avoids rapid cutting. He favors this careful, deliberate composition. He holds on a shot, allowing you, the viewer, time to absorb the full weight and the implication, the symbolic meaning of the moment.
We've often heard this described as the painterly quality of his frames. That sounds great, but what does it actually mean? What are we seeing?
Well, it's a perfect description. He is heavily influenced by classical art and medieval tapestries, especially in a film like Excalibur. His shots are deliberately structured.
Structured how?
Often with deep focus. So everything from the mud in the foreground to the misty trees way in the distance is sharp.
I see.
And that depth of field, it grounds the action. It imbues even the background elements with significance. So his images are so carefully composed that they often feel static and timeless. It doesn't matter if the subject is Lee Marvin on a 1960s freeway or a knight in shining armor.
So that visual language anchors the modern story to something, I guess, ancient and essential. Okay, so if the visuals are the anchor, what are the recurring philosophical concepts he's constantly wrestling with? What's his checklist of obsessions?
He has a relentless set of thematic obsessions. The most prominent one is always the collision between civilization and wilderness.
Not just geographically, right?
No, not just geographically, but internally.
Right.
And this is always tied to the corruption of innocence, the cyclical, often self-defeating nature of violence, and above all, the spiritual journey.
So it's not just a physical journey from point A to point B. It's a stripping away, a kind of transformation.
Precisely. His protagonists are almost never comfortable. They are put under extreme pressure, deliberately stripped of their civilized veneer,
Right.
and forced to confront the primal self that lies just beneath the polite surface of society. Every trek up a river, every quest, every violent act is both a physical ordeal and a deep internal reckoning.
And the film's success, then, relies on how profoundly the character is changed by that confrontation.
Yes. And this leads us to what is maybe his most polarizing, but also his most essential trait. His commitment to the mystical.
Supernatural elements.
The supernatural, the inexplicable.
Mhm.
He treats it all with such utter, almost confrontational seriousness. There's zero irony.
He never winks at the audience.
Never. And that sincerity is the linchpin of his vision. He refuses to hedge his bets. He treats magic and deep myth with complete earnestness. He never gives you that signal of, don't worry, we know this isn't real, but it's cool.
No, he commits entirely to the internal logic of the world he's creating, and he demands that you meet him on his own terms.
Exactly.
But, okay, let me push back on that for a second. If the goal is this serious, profound allegory, like in, say, Very Strange Zardoz, why the ridiculously distracting costuming and visuals? I mean, doesn't that undermine the seriousness and sincerity you just praised?
That's a brilliant question, and
Yeah.
it gets right to the heart of why he's so polarizing. For Boorman, the visual shock is part of the sincerity of the myth.
How so?
Well, myth often deals in the outrageous, doesn't it? Talking serpents, floating swords, giant stone heads. He doesn't believe in softening the visual impact to make the intellectual message easier to swallow.
So the visual outrageousness is a literal representation of the idea. The absurdity is the point.
It's intentional, yes, because the serious ideas, like the meaning of mortality in Zardoz, are so deeply held that he trusts the audience to look past the red loincloth to see the philosophical core.
So that willingness to embrace the inexplicable without apology, even if it means risking critical scorn or alienating some viewers, is what defines his distinct voice.
Absolutely. When he presents the healing power of the Grail or the land sickening when the king is wounded, he does so without any hesitation. And for those who accept the premise, the emotional resonance is immense because the themes feel genuine, profound, and uncontaminated by any kind of postmodern self-awareness.
Let's track that uncompromising vision to his first major American splash. In 1967, he delivered Point Blank. This film, starring Lee Marvin, was based on a Richard Stark novel. By all rights, it should have been a standard, hard-boiled crime thriller.
It really should have been. But instead, Boorman took the conventions of film noir and just transformed them into something absolutely radical, strange, and existential.
Marvin plays Walker, the double-crossed criminal looking for his 93 grand, but it's not a traditional revenge movie at all.
Not at all. It announced the arrival of a major experimental talent. The source material describes the result as dreamlike, which for a gritty crime story is just a radical departure.
So what made it so revolutionary for 1960s American cinema? What was he doing technically?
It was the deliberate dismantling of structure. He used a fractured chronology and this highly stylized elliptical editing.
Okay, for anyone unfamiliar, what is elliptical editing?
It means he cuts out large chunks of action that would typically explain the plot. It creates these temporal gaps, forcing the audience to leap forward, blurring the line between the present memory and hallucination.
So instead of showing us every step of Walker's plan, he just cuts from an action to the result, leaving us disoriented.
Exactly. It mirrors Walker's own state of mind, and it creates immediate ambiguity. We're left wondering, is Walker even truly alive? Is this whole revenge odyssey just a dying fantasy happening in his mind after he was shot in Alcatraz?
And the film just refuses to give you an easy answer.
No closure. It operates on the
Us-
logic of a nightmare. And visually, Los Angeles is completely transformed in this film.
It's depicted as a modernist nightmare.
Yeah, Boorman uses the sprawling, cold architecture of the 1960s, empty parking garages, impersonal high-rises, vast corporate offices. The spaces are empty, sterile, cold.
Which mirrors Walker's internal state.
Perfectly. He is less a sympathetic character seeking justice and more a force of nature, an avenging ghost moving through a system designed to crush the individual. The corporate criminals he's hunting are faceless. They represent systemic greed, not individualized evil.
What's fascinating is that Point Blank served as a blueprint, right? It proved that genre films, a crime story no less, could operate at this high, almost hallucinatory art house level.
It was a huge landmark for neo-noir. While it was initially, a financial disappointment because it was so avant-garde,
I can imagine.
its reputation has only grown exponentially. It showed that crime drama could be an examination of existential dread. Directors like Christopher Nolan and Nicholas Winding Refn have explicitly cited its influence.
So if Point Blank was the radical arrival, then Deliverance in 1972 was the undeniable confirmation of his commercial and artistic mastery. This was a massive hit.
Oh, this is Boorman at his most visceral and, you could argue, his most widely appreciated. Based on James Dickey's novel, and Dickey himself wrote the screenplay.
Which must have been a tense collaboration from what I've read.
Famously so. But the result is the ultimate Boorman thesis. The story of four Atlanta businessmen whose canoe trip down a fictional river descends into an absolute nightmare.
And right away, you see all those signature themes we just discussed. Civilization versus the wilderness, where the river isn't just a place for a weekend trip.
No, it's an antagonist. It's beautiful, but it's profoundly treacherous.
The river is the supreme catalyst. It strips away their suits, their corporate titles, and eventually...
their civilized veneer. It forces them into a primordial state. The film is a survival thriller, yes, but its deeper, more enduring layer is a harrowing meditation on masculinity, hierarchy, and what happens when sophisticated people are forced into uncivilized, violent acts.
And that famous dueling banjos scene is just masterful in how quickly it establishes the central tension. It's this moment of false, idyllic calm before the storm breaks.
That scene is essential because it perfectly captures the gulf between urban sophistication and rural tradition.
Yeah.
Modernity versus something older, more primal, and deeply suspicious.
It's the moment the city men realize they are fundamentally outsiders here.
And that feeling of perceived cultural superiority, it quickly transforms into genuine physical peril when they're confronted with a hostility they're totally unprepared for.
Then comes the film's most disturbing sequence, the sexual assault of Ned Beatty's character. The power of that scene lies in what it represents, doesn't it? The violation of the civilized self.
It's a moment of complete violation and humiliation, stripped bare for the audience to witness. It's the ultimate degradation. It strips the victim not just of dignity, but of the very shield of civilization he thought he possessed.
And that act forces the entire group into a desperate moral crisis. It elevates the film from just a thriller to something much more profound.
It's the primal nature of the act that shatters their modern composure. And what also elevates Deliverance is the sheer authenticity and physical danger on screen. There's a texture to it because it was real.
It's unbelievable by today's standards.
It is. Boorman was committed to practical realism. The river sequences were filmed without stunt doubles. Oh yeah. They relied entirely on the actors' willingness to perform genuinely dangerous stunts. Burt Reynolds famously broke his coccyx.
I heard about that.
And John Voight performed this highly dangerous maneuver, holding onto a canoe in whitewater. Vilmos Sigmund's cinematography captured the river's breathtaking beauty and its menace in perfect balance. You feel the cold, the exhaustion, the terror. It's absolutely palpable.
And that gives the film its enduring weight. But the moral complexity that follows the assault and the killing, the decision to cover it up, that's the real lingering punch of the film, isn't it?
That cover-up defines the film's moral landscape. There are no easy answers. They decide to bury the body and create a fabricated story to protect themselves. But Boorman makes it very clear that while they survive physically, that decision profoundly haunts them.
It never leaves them.
Never. Deliverance asks these brutal, enduring questions. What is the true psychological price of survival when you commit an uncivilized act? And what innate goodness is forever lost when you internalize violence and deception?
That final scene, the dream sequence.
The hand coming out of the water, it confirms that the trauma is never truly submerged. It's always there.
And the film's success was huge. $46 million on a $2 million budget, 3 Oscar nominations. It became a cultural touchstone.
It really did. So with that massive success and newfound clout after Deliverance, Boorman had the freedom to make almost anything he wanted.
Then what does he choose?
Zardoz. In 1974, a deeply strange, intensely personal sci-fi film that feels like a cinematic dare.
It seems like a deliberate pivot, almost a rejection of commercial safety, to create this bizarre, divisive, dense allegory set in the year 2293.
Well, what's fascinating here is his dedication to an uncompromising personal vision. He could have made any standard studio film he wanted, but he chose to explore incredibly complex philosophical territory.
Immortality, class, consequence, the necessity of death.
All through this highly stylized and, yes, often outrageous sci-fi lens.
We absolutely have to address the aesthetics. Sean Connery, fresh off of being James Bond, in a bright red loincloth.
A diaper, some called it.
Leather thigh-high boots and long braids, serving a giant floating stone head called Zardoz. It's just visual overload.
It is outrageous. And upon release, critics certainly focused on the surface strangeness. They called it pretentious and weird. But beneath that surface, there are profoundly serious ideas about human stagnation.
The whole concept is a reversal, right? The supposedly primitive man, Zed, is more vital than the ultra-civilized immortals.
Exactly. The narrative centers on these immortal elites who live in a protected paradise called the Vortex. And Boorman depicts immortality as a curse, not a blessing.
Why? Why is it a curse for them?
Because without mortality and consequence, they've become utterly decadent, listless, and spiritually empty. They're freed from want, death, and meaningful struggle. The ultimate irony is that they desperately long for mortality. They long for consequence and for meaning.
So they see Zed, this violent outsider, as their only path toward necessary change.
Their only path to an end. That is the ultimate Boorman statement, isn't it? Even in a utopian future, if you remove consequence, the threat of failure or death society withers and becomes fundamentally meaningless.
It's a pure articulation of his theme of necessary cycles, life, death, and renewal.
And even though Zardoz was a commercial failure and a critical punching bag initially, it is now revered as a cult classic. Its enduring appeal lies in that sheer audacity.
Okay, let's shift gears from the bizarre to the beautiful. In 1981, Boorman finally realized a long-held passion project, Excalibur. This is the film that many consider the definitive cinematic adaptation of the Arthurian legend.
I would be one of them. Excalibur is myth made manifest on screen. Filmed entirely in Ireland, Boorman captured the rise and fall of Camelot, primarily drawing from the dark, cyclical narrative of Thomas Malory's La Morte d'Arthur.
It's intensely visual, almost operatic. He compresses generations of mythology into this powerful, sweeping epic.
He really does.
Yeah.
And this is where his doctrine of complete sincerity truly pays off. He presents magic, chivalry, the legendary objects, the sword, the grail, as actual, impactful forces without a trace of modern irony.
That sincerity is everything. It allows the film to carry genuine gravitas, and the aesthetics are just astonishing.
He deliberately created armor that gleamed impossibly, whether it was clean or more often just coated in mud and blood. The forests are perpetually misty, creating a world where magic feels constantly present.
And the score.
The score. The masterful use of Karl Orff's O Fortuna and Wagner's Tristan und Isolde gives the entire film this timeless, ritualistic quality.
It's also surprisingly adult and emotionally complex for a fantasy film, especially regarding sexuality and the brutality of the medieval world.
It's not sanitized at all. Boorman includes the elements that create true tragedy. The incestuous conception of Mordred, born from the union of Arthur and his half-sister Morgana.
He presents that as the foundational original sin.
It's a profound thematic choice. It means that Camelot's destruction isn't an external failure. It's an internal structural guarantee from the very beginning. Its fate sealed by human desire and moral blindness, which elevates the material far beyond your typical fantasy adventure.
And this connects directly to maybe the purest Boorman theme in his entire filmography, the powerful literal connection between the vitality of the ruler and the flourishing of the realm.
This is the concept of the Fisher King, a key element of the Grail legend, and Boorman visualizes this ancient archetype with stunning clarity. When Arthur is vital and pure, Camelot is golden, and the land is fertile.
But when he is wounded, betrayed, or burdened by guilt,
the land itself sickens, and we visually witness the decay. The once green forests become bare and muddy, the atmosphere is choked by constant mist, the entire world reflects Arthur's spiritual decline.
So the search for the Holy Grail isn't just a physical quest for a cup.
No, it's a desperate attempt to heal the psychological wound of the king, and by extension, the world.
And what was the impact of this highly personal, mythic approach?
It was substantial. While his budget was modest, the film was a success. It established a visual and thematic template for modern fantasy. Excalibur showed that these ancient stories could be treated with both grandeur and grit.
It influenced basically every major fantasy project that followed.
Absolutely. Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, the epic scale of Game of Thrones, you can see its DNA everywhere.
Let's talk about a major surprise in his career then. Hope and Glory in 1987. After tackling the future and the ancient past, he delivered this deeply personal, semi-autobiographical account of his childhood during the London Blitz.
It was a fascinating departure in terms of genre, but entirely consistent in terms of finding the mythic in the everyday, and was a huge critical triumph. Nominated for 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director.
It proved he could find the universal within the deeply personal without sacrificing any of his thematic depth.
It did.
What makes this film stand out, though, compared to the vast canon of World War II narratives?
He filters the war entirely through the eyes of his young protagonist, Billy. And crucially for Billy, the Blitz is not primarily a trauma. It's an adventure.
Right.
The war represents a suspension of all normal rules. School gets bombed, which means freedom. Dad is away, which means independence and a sense of exhilaration.
It completely flips the narrative script. It captures the emotional truth of how children process catastrophe-finding moments of joy and discovery amid circumstances that are terrifying their parents.
The film is warm, funny, and profoundly humane. It treats childhood itself as a mythic time, a period when reality is suspended and memory is selective. He captures the quality of memory, the bright, almost glowing emotional truth, rather than trying to provide a strict, dreary photographic record of the hardship.
And even in this naturalistic memoir setting, we still see that quintessential Boorman visual significance we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. The images glow with archetypal meaning. The family's house on fire, which is terrifying, but also visually spectacular. The journey upriver to the grandfather's home, which is a return to a rural, pristine state.
A thematic echo of Deliverance or the healing lands of Arthur.
Exactly. Even when working in a more accessible register, he finds those resonant, archetypal moments of escape and freedom. It proved he could work naturalistically and still be fundamentally John Boorman.
So we have a director who has consistently resisted the mainstream, never sought a massive franchise hit, and never won an Oscar, yet his films endure and are widely studied. How do we accurately measure this non-mainstream legacy?
I think we measure it first and foremost through visual influence. His commitment to authenticity, using practical locations, natural light, integrating landscape as an emotional force, is directly traceable to the work of major contemporary filmmakers.
Like who?
Think of Terrence Malick's use of light and nature, or Ridley Scott's massive atmospheric historical epics. You can draw lines directly from Boorman's ethos to films like The Revenant, and even the visual language of Apocalypse Now.
And he pioneered the idea that treating genre material, be it noir, sci-fi, or high fantasy, with intellectual and technical seriousness was not only acceptable but necessary.
He legitimized the mythic approach. By treating Excalibur with such uncompromising sincerity and operatic style, he opened the doors for later generations to treat genre material as high art. We wouldn't have the sophisticated landscape of modern fantasy cinema without him.
And crucially, he maintained near-complete artistic integrity throughout his entire career.
That independence is the definition of his legacy. He made films in Ireland, England, the U.S., wherever the project demanded, and always answered to his own vision first. He often worked outside the major studio system.
Or he leveraged his brief moments of success.
Like after Deliverance, yeah. He used that to pursue highly idiosyncratic projects like Zardoz. While this lack of compromise was sometimes commercially costly, it is precisely why his work holds such lasting value. He refused to become a Hollywood commodity.
And his thematic explorations of masculinity, violence, and the breaking point of civilized behavior, particularly in a film like Deliverance, they remain urgently relevant today.
That exploration of toxic masculinity, the male urge for violence, the fragile relationship between societal order and primal urges, that's timeless. His films consistently ask profound, unsettling questions. What is the breaking point of civilization? What is the limit of human resilience? These are not questions that can ever truly date.
And this integrity extends directly to his commitment to practical filmmaking. He demands the physical reality be captured on film.
He is obsessed with authenticity and texture. He shoots on location, uses available natural light whenever possible, and often requires his actors to perform difficult and dangerous things, believing that this imbues the film with a unique weight.
It gives his cinema a texture that pure, digitally generated spectacle often lacks. You feel the grit, the cold, the physical effort.
You really do. And he's more than just a director. He is truly a complete film artist involved in every aspect of the process.
He almost always writes or co-writes his screenplays.
Right. He's deeply involved in production design and scouting. He also acts as a producer who champions other work.
We should also mention his writing. His memoir, Adventures of a Suburban Boy, reveals him to be an incredibly thoughtful, articulate artist.
Exactly. He remains an advocate for cinema preservation and the communal theatrical experience. He fundamentally understands that for films dealing with mythic scale, the shared viewing experience is essential. And even late in his career, he maintained that edge with films like The General in 1998.
The black and white crime drama.
And the beautiful sequel to Hope and Glory, Queen and Country, in 2014, proving his enduring relevance.
John Boorman's filmography is undeniably one of the most distinctive, powerful, and idiosyncratic bodies of work in world cinema. He never chased the ephemeral blockbuster, yet his films endure precisely because they speak to something fundamental and eternal in the human experience.
I think in an era that is just dominated by corporate IP and mandated franchise filmmaking, Boorman's deeply personal, mythically resonant cinema is almost revolutionary in its independence.
It really is.
He reminds us that film can and should grapple with the largest questions of human existence, about betrayal, life, death, and consequence, while simultaneously being viscerally exciting and visually stunning.
He offers a potent template for any aspiring artist. Be absolutely true to your vision, embrace the profound mythic elements of human life, trust your audience to meet you halfway, and never stop asking the difficult questions. His legacy is measured not in fleeting box office success, but in the enduring and transformative impact on those who have seen his unique way of seeing the world.
And that transformation comes from his consistent engagement with the themes of decay and renewal. If you look across his filmography, from the downfall of Camelot and Excalibur to the stagnation of the immortals in Zardos to the psychological collapse of the men in Deliverance, Boorman repeatedly depicts the necessary downfall of great systems.
Which raises an important final question for you to mull over long after this deep dive is complete. Based on his recurring themes, what does Boorman's entire body of work suggest is the ultimate non-negotiable requirement for any society or any individual to retain meaning and vitality?
His films strongly, powerfully imply that meaning and vitality require the acceptance of mortality and consequence. Without the threat of death or the moral weight of consequence, systems inevitably become decadent, stagnant, and ultimately meaningless. It is the acceptance of the finite, the cycle of life, death, and renewal, that Arthurian concept of the land and the king that defines true human vitality. It's what keeps us fighting, striving, and crucially, feeling.